Beyond that, now I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Gallagher, or actually, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Salters and have him introduce our special guest, because we have tremendous news tonight, and this is going to be really exciting. And I don't want to step on the news, but Mr. Gallagher, we're so thankful for your hard work and effort on our behalf, and in terms of helping us manage funds at a very high level. So, Mr. Salters.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity to discuss this tonight, and also, want to thank Mr. Gallagher for toughing it out and being here at 5 after 10 on a Tuesday night to deliver this report to you guys. We have you authorized us to do a bond through a bond resolution to do a bond sale recently, and we felt like the outcome of that sale and the timing of everything that was involved warranted an update to the board and to the public about where we stand. Mr. Gallagher, I'm going to turn it over to you. I actually do have the clicker, and I can drive. Okay.
You can drive.
All right, and board, I know there was a copy or two left in the boardroom, but I have a copy of Mr. Gallagher's presentation. If Ms. Garrett, I don't know if you get a copy.
Okay. Madam Chair, ladies and gentlemen of the board, Dr. Little, it's a pleasure to be here with you. I was here with you about a year ago, and we went over the results from your first sale of your referendum program from 2018. If we look at the page 2 of the handout, we received 5 bids when we sold these bonds 2 weeks ago. Citigroup Capital Markets came in with the lowest rate of a 1.933. 1.933 to borrow money for 25 years. That is amazingly cheap. Some key points there. We closed on the issue this morning, so the money's in the bank over at the County Treasurer's office for you. It's 25 years. One of the things is the net reoffering premium yielded an additional just under $6.5 million. The project fund deposit was $161 million, broken down to $155,980,000 for your referendum. Because you needed to make your installment purchase revenue bond payments, we added that into this as well, and we added your annual capital maintenance to save you in cost of issuance. So all that was done and combined into this bond issue. So you'll have $5,250,000 going into what's known as your 8% money for capital projects. Next page. The only thing I really want to highlight here, the district enjoys a AA2 rating from Moody's or a AA rating from Standard & Poor's. Exceptionally high credit, which is a result of why you received the strong bids that you did for your bond issue. Part of that goes back to the very conservative fiscal measures, maintaining an adequate general fund, budgets within your means. Those things all factor into these credit ratings. Not to mention a great community with very good economy. That helps out a lot. Okay. The thing that's really probably the most exciting about all of this is we've been at 90 mils last year. We're going to be at 90 this year. You've got the ability to, within your program, drop down to 87.6 or roughly 88 mils going forward. Key components in that, we still have room for this next $50 million to be issued, which would be done next year. And you've also got money that's factored in for annual capital maintenance. And so you can make those decisions whether you want to be below, but the thing that's most exciting is we're going to be substantially below the target. And that original target, when you went out and had your referendum, that number was 99 mils. Y'all were going to go up about 15 mils. So it's pretty exciting to see that we were able to do that. If we flip over to the next page.
And just before you turn, I just wanted to point out that this year we were supposed to go in the schedule to 95 mils. And so not only are we not going to 95, we're able to stay at 90. So, and of course then the next year we would have jumped to 99. So that's really exciting to not have to do that.
And remind us again, the cost of a mill to the taxpayer.
$4 per mil on an owner-occupied home, $6 on a car.
Per 100,000, right? Or is
per
that
100,000?
Yes.
Okay. If we look over the next page, last year we locked in $165 million at 2.519. I thought that was incredibly low. This year we come in at a 1.93. You know, a couple things that factored into how this whole program is being able to be brought in at 10 mils below. You authorized a couple of refundings. Each of those refundings shaved a mil off each. So we did a refunding in 19 and a refunding in 20. And one of the other factors that's come in is the assessment growth. We were very, very conservative in our model. We didn't want to get out there and worry about if the growth doesn't materialize, then we got to raise mills above that. So we were very, very conservative. Assessment numbers that came in this year came in very, very strong. We still left a little bit of what we call a COVID buffer this year. That way, if collections do not materialize like we think like they are supposed to later this year, we've got a little bit of room that we're able to not have an issue next year. The remaining piece of the referendum, like I said, we've got $50 million left, and that would be anticipated to be issued next year about this time.
Can you remind me of the relationship between interest rate and bond? I mean, typically the rule of thumb is when interest rate in a rising interest rate environment, bonds are good. In a stable interest rate or falling, the bond rate goes down, which is of course in our favor, you know, that the bond rate goes down. Does that typically hold true for this? I mean,
Everything's out the window right now.
Gotcha.
Everything's out the window as far as that's concerned.
So there is no correlation that we can tell?
Usually bad news means yields on bonds drop is to your benefit, but right now rates are so low and so compressed because of everything that has happened this past year.
Sure. Thank you.
Okay. Looking at your debt structure, wanted to highlight one thing. If you look in column K, annual maintenance bonds, we do have $5,250,000 budgeted each year for annual maintenance. That way you can plan your projects if there are other things that you want and things that you need that are outside of your referendum program. You do have a recurring source of funds for those. Also can fund technology purchases and things of those sorts.
And that's backed into the slide 2 before, this graph for the projected.
Yes, sir. That is already
Yeah.
included, or if you want to say baked in there, the yellow at the top.
And that keeps it below the 8%, right? Because we've got to keep those.
That's
annual-
well within your 8% debt limit.
Right, okay.
And as you recall, some of you who've been on the board a while may recall that we've never really had that, and that's
Yes.
why we've had to go referendum to referendum. And so one of the goals in the 18 program was to establish that funding stream so that we can do the annual maintenance like Ms. Garris referred to earlier on buildings and not have to wait for a large referendum to make things like that happen. So that's the goal of that funding stream. And of course, the initial usage of some of that funding is to maintain our technology infrastructure and also the original $393 million program. We backed out a number of HVAC projects and things like that to get down to 365, and we kind of rolled those into this funding stream to be able to accomplish those things outside of a referendum. So it gives you the ability to do those things along and along.
Well, and to maintain our technology platform.
And to maintain the
that has to
technology
come-
platform.
So, I mean.
Well, you can see how important that is now.
Yeah, and I
and so-
remember, it was probably Dr. Woodward's evaluation, that was some of the feedback we gave her, is that we need a sustainable capital funding model for the technology platform that we'd rolled out.
Right.
I mean,
And-
this is good.
And you're going to have other questions, but one thing that I want Mike just to say one more time is, Mike, can you address the bond premium that we've achieved over these two sales? That number was some $22 million, I think we talked about between the two.
Yeah, we got about 6.5 million from this issue, and I think we were around 17 million on the last issue.
And
So that is additional monies that went into your project fund.
And I had to ask Theo, because I had to sign all this, about a week, 2 weeks ago. And again, that's the premium that the issuer provided us when the bonds were issued, because they in turn sell them to other investors, right? Or how would you explain that in layman's terms?
In simple terms, it's this. It's the difference between the coupon and the yield. The purchasers of the bonds want a set interest rate, and it may be 5% typically out to the call date. And then from the call date on, it was like 2s and 3s. The fact of the matter is the yield in the first year was probably about 17 basis points. So they're willing to give you prepaid interest. I'm going to pay you money today, so you will pay me 5% down the road.
So is it an arbitrage, basically?
No,
It's not an arbitrage?
No, sir.
Okay.
it's prepaid interest.
Okay.
All right,
And so it's additional funds available to the program.
I am not business-minded. I've never taken a business course in my whole life, other than one economics class in college. But I'm gonna try to connect the dots. And I'm gonna make this very simple. So because our district has sound fiscal management, and we maintain a fund balance that not only is healthy and appropriate, but it's stable. We don't take in and out of it. We maintain the fund balance. That, in turn, gives us a very solid credit rating, so that when we go to market, our money makes us money, basically.
It saves you money.
It saves us money. Okay, thank you.
And we go through a ratings process with these rating agencies and do interviews, and they evaluate our financials and our fiscal practices, and I mean, that happens every time. And when we sit on these ratings calls, and the most recent ones have all been around our response to COVID and how we've handled COVID and what the impact of COVID has been to our district. That's been their most important discussion point. And again, each time we've had these calls, they've been, well, obviously the ratings show it, they've been very pleased with our financial strategies and practices to make it through this stuff.
But you have, I mean, when you have something fantastic like what Mike is telling us about, you have to go back 4 or 5 steps in our financial management process to yield that benefit. Because it really, I mean, we have conversations all the time about our fund balance and the importance of it and how important it is to keep it stable. And I think this is very good evidence of why those conversations are important and why that fund balance is just critical for the financial health of not only for our district, but our community, because, I mean, we've saved money. Okay.
Lots of money.
Lots of money, lots of money.
Okay. Well, thank you, Mr. Gallagher. We appreciate you driving up from Charleston to give us that wonderful news. That's great news. Okay, at
Thanks.
this time,
I
Board,
have
are
a-
there any other questions or comments for Mr. Gallagher before he heads down 26?
Yes, I have a question. I just want to say this speaks volumes to our finance department as well and the work y'all have done. This is great. Thank you so much. Mr. Gallagher, I may have addressed this even further down, but since you're here, and Mr. Salters just mentioned technology infrastructure. During a conference last week, they talked about acquisition, use, and security agreements as a way to fund a technology refresh.
Yes,
Is that
ma'am.
anything we use?
No, ma'am. It's not something this district has used. I can't even remember the last time if any equipment was leased.
I'd have to go back and look at the specific year, but we did a lease, guys. It was when we first started rolling out devices early on. And the issue that happened is those lease payments had to come out of general fund. And the pressure on the general fund to use other operating expenses like teacher salaries squeezed that payment stream, the priority for that out, and pushed it over to the capital side. But it's been a number of years ago since we've done something like that.
Okay. Is that something worth looking into for the future?
I think, can I say something, because it's
Yeah,
kind
sure.
of my history?
Yeah.
When we first started buying devices, they were so expensive, and they have come down so dramatically. A Chromebook, I mean, it just doesn't compare to what we initially purchased when we first started doing all that. So
Right.
I'm not sure you want to lease something that
Well, that is true. I mean, some of the devices that we're buying now, the residual value of them is not what they used to be. I mean, we were paying, $1,000, $1,200 for a device, 15 years ago, and now we're paying $300 for a Chromebook. So that is a valid point. It is still a way to, to stretch your dollars, but you have to be, as I said, careful about how you make those payments, because it does impact your general fund, which typically is more stressed, I guess.
Well, and the other issue is who's the tax basis. So again, the general
right.
fund operation it's either the legislature or businesses, and we raise millage on businesses. For capital, that's owner-occupied houses where most, obviously, our kids are coming from generally in their property. So
And business.
yeah, and businesses, but we pull the houses into it. So
Yes.
again, to me, a device is supposed to be used more than a year, so by default, it's capital, and the very tax base that benefits from it is paying for it. So to me, it makes sense to come out of capital.
Right, I understand, but in here, I mean, the lady giving this had a lot of experience in finances, and it's not a lease. It says at the end of the term of the agreement, the school district owns all of the equipment.
Correct.
Anyway,
It's a great program. The way your program's set up, you're able to use general obligation bonds, and you're set up to be able to do that. GO bonds are going to give you the lowest cost of capital. The equipment acquisition agreement is going to be a non-appropriation credit. So you're going to have to make a choice each year. Are you going to issue bonds to make the payment? Well, if you're going to issue bonds to make the payment and you've got plenty of 8% debt limit, then there's no real good reason to do an equipment acquisition and use agreement for technology purchases.
Okay, that was my question.
It's a tool
Okay.
that's in the bag, but for your program, it's not a tool that we would recommend using or think that you would need to be using.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else, anyone? Okay, thank you, Mr. Gallagher.
Thank you all. Y'all have a
It's
great night.
Yeah,
Congratulations.
great news. You can come back anytime with
travels.
news like that.